He had held her tiny hand the moment she learned to walk, wiped her tears after every scraped knee, stayed awake nights while she cried in the dark. He once watched the Falcons versus Buccaneers games with her. His dream was to see her grow up and play video games like Expedition 33 with her. She was the best thing that could happen to him. Every moment a father could give, he had given. But lately, every laugh felt like a challenge. Every question she asked felt like a reminder he couldn't escape. Something had shifted inside him, a quiet tension he couldn't name, a suspicion he whispered to no one, but which had begun to rule his thoughts. And tonight, the weight of it all had a place to land. A car moved along Thayer Road, headlights bouncing against the wet asphalt. He drove steadily, but inside the storm raged. Every mile brought him closer to a choice he'd imagined over and over, until imagining it became believing it. When the fire erupted, and the flames licked the metal of the car he had once polished with pride, the world outside couldn't see the panic inside him. He stood there, calm in the cold air, hiding a truth no one else could guess. But inside that vehicle, something had changed forever. And the question that lingers even now is this: how does a father's love turn into a moment that no one could undo? Before we begin tonight, I want to speak to you parent to parent, adult to adult, human to human. Because after everything you will hear today, after walking through every moment this child never survived, there's a truth we can't escape. Children don't get to choose the adults who raise them. They don't get to choose the homes they grow up in. They don't get to leave when things become unbearable. They can't run, can't protect themselves, can't fight back. A child's entire world, their entire future, sits in the hands of the grown-ups around them. And when those hands fail them, the child doesn't get a second chance. Please tell me where you are watching from and what time it is over there, as this can help us determine the best time for you, our subscribers. If it made you look at the kids in your life with more tenderness, more awareness, more gratitude, then I ask you, from my heart to yours, please subscribe. Not for entertainment, not for numbers, but because there is another child out there right now whose story risks being forgotten. Another case no one is telling. Another little life slipping through the cracks. Share this video so we could reach more audiences and perhaps help some who need the information we will share here today. Be sure to comment, as your insightful thoughts could be just what a child out there may depend on for survival. And maybe, by staying here with us, by listening, by caring, you help bring just a little more light to the places where children are still hurting. Thank you for watching, for feeling, for remembering. And wherever you are tonight, please check on a child you love. Flashing red and blue lights tore through the night, bouncing off wet asphalt and trembling trees. The shrill wail of sirens cut through the quiet of American Township, Ohio, the sound both urgent and impossibly distant. Smoke curled into the sky, thick and acrid, the smell of burning rubber and plastic heavy enough to make the deputies gag even before they reached the car. There he was, Nicholas Stemen, standing just beyond the flames, swaying on unsteady legs. His eyes were glassy, bloodshot, staring at the fire as though it held some secret he couldn't name. His shirt was damp with sweat, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hands trembling as he fumbled with a lighter clipped to his belt. His words slurred together, sharp yet hollow. "Nobody's in the car. Nobody. I swear." But his movements betrayed him. He glanced toward the cracked passenger window, hesitated, swallowed hard, then looked past the deputies as if the truth was hiding in the shadows beyond. He stomped a foot against the asphalt, muttered something under his breath, fingers clutching and unclutching like a man trying to hold onto a memory slipping away. Every instinct screamed that he was lying. The deputies raised hoses, sprayed water at the fire, the steam rising, sharp against the cold night. Flames hissed and popped as metal twisted and glass shattered. Yet Nicholas didn't step back. He didn't show the alarm any sane person would feel at a car engulfed in flames. He merely rocked slightly, mumbling, staring, waiting. And through it all, the night held its breath, the quiet around the road pressing in like a weight that refused to lift. A small, almost invisible detail caught one deputy's eye. A little pink shoe, partially melted, wedged under the dashboard. Nicholas didn't notice it. Or if he did, he didn't react. His focus remained on the flames, yet something about the way he looked at the vehicle betrayed him. The car might have been metal and fire and rubber, but the truth inside it was alive, and it was already waiting. Minutes stretched. The fire died down, hissing, spitting embers, revealing a car blackened, warped, scarred by heat. Nicholas exhaled sharply, a quivering breath that seemed too human, too raw to match his insistence that the car was empty. The deputies stepped closer, flashlights cutting through smoke and shadows, careful not to reveal the terror they already sensed. And in that frozen moment, when the flames were gone but the silence remained, the first hint of horror hovered in the air, impossible to ignore. Something was inside that car, something small and fragile, and all the rehearsed lies in the world couldn't hide it. If you were standing there, watching a man claim the car was empty while your gut told you otherwise, what would you do? Would you trust him? Or would your instincts scream that the truth was already lying in the shadows, waiting to be discovered? The answer to that question would come faster than anyone imagined, and when it did, it would shatter the very idea of protection, of innocence, of the bond between parent and child. But for now, the night held its breath. Nicholas Stemen stood in the cold, the smoke curling around him, a father, a liar, and a secret the world was about to see. Inside the car was Liliana, 2 years old, African-American, full of life, and endlessly curious. She had a laugh that could fill a room and a stubborn streak that made her insist on swinging higher than anyone else dared. She loved goldfish crackers, one by one, the way she meticulously peeled grapes before nibbling them. Small things, ordinary things, but to her they were treasures, and to everyone who loved her, they were glimpses into a soul that was impossibly bright. Her mother, Ariel Collins, often recalled mornings when Liliana would tumble into her arms, squealing, giggling, and somehow calming the weight of adult worries with a single hug. "She had this way of looking at you," Ariel said in an archived interview, voice trembling, "like she knew the deepest parts of your heart and didn't care if you could handle it or not. She just wanted you to feel everything with her." Friends and neighbors described her as fearless in her tiny world, a little whirlwind of energy whose curiosity was matched only by her tenderness. Even the smallest moments were vivid. A forgotten sippy cup on the porch, a crumpled drawing of a sun with smiling stick figures, her tiny shoes left at the edge of the swing set, each detail a fragment of a life brimming with possibility. Birthday photos capture her in golden sunlight, frosting smeared across her cheeks, eyes wide with wonder, and a grin that seemed to say, "I am alive, I am here, and I will take all the joy in the world with me." Yet, just weeks later, she would face a fate that no child should ever know. Family friends remember her tiny hands pressing against the glass of the car windows when she rode in her father's vehicle, little legs bouncing, chattering about the park or the dog or the snack she had begged for that morning. And in these moments, the world seemed simple, innocent. Yet, for reasons no one could have foreseen, the very hands that once held toys and snacks were about to meet fire, confusion, and terror. Even as her mother and family spoke about Liliana's spirit, there were hints, subtle, almost imperceptible, of frustration in her father. Nicholas Stemen had raised her with care, but in small ways, the tension of parenting, of adulthood, and of decisions made too late had begun to crack the edges of his composure. He had loved her, yes, but he had grown weary, impatient, and unsteady. Those who observed him in the weeks before that September night sensed the growing pressure, the quiet brewing of choices that would have consequences far beyond his understanding. And so, we remember Liliana not as a victim, but as a child in full color, a little girl whose laughter echoed in empty hallways, whose energy turned mundane days into adventures, whose hugs could heal wounds adults didn't even know they carried. Every picture, every memory, every small object she left behind tells a story of innocence, joy, and the unfairness of life. As we linger on her world, we are forced to ask, how does a child this joyful, this full of life, end up at the center of a tragedy this severe? How does the weight of choices, frustration, and human frailty collide with a spirit so young and pure? The answers are coming, But for now, all we can do is remember Liliana, a little girl who deserved the world, and was given anything but. Nicholas Stemen grew up in Ohio, in a house that looked ordinary from the outside, but inside, the walls carried echoes of tension. As a boy, Nicholas learned to carry his frustrations quietly, masking them with charm or a forced smile. But the anger never fully went away. It lingered in quiet corners, waiting. By the time he became a father, the patterns of his life were well established. Alcohol had long been his escape, a way to numb the frustration, the self-doubt, the moments when the weight of responsibility felt unbearable. Weekend drinks became nightly habits, and the haze of intoxication often stretched into mornings he barely remembered. Friends noticed the signs: bloodshot eyes, a slurred apology, a distracted smile, but they could only watch, powerless. He struggled more than he admitted, one family member would later say. When Liliana was born, Nicholas was captivated by her. He marveled at her tiny fingers curling around his hand, the way her eyes lit up when he peeked around a corner, and the way she laughed at the simplest things: a spinning top, a bouncing ball, the swing set in their backyard. She was pure joy, Arielle Collins, her mother, would later recall. Yet Nicholas' love came with its shadows. Stress over custody disputes, financial instability, and the demands of daily life chipped away at his patience. Small irritations, a spilled snack, a missed bedtime, a broken toy, sometimes ignited frustrations he couldn't contain. Even in the quiet moments, the contradictions were visible. One afternoon, he would lift Liliana onto his shoulders, spinning her until her laughter rang through the house. Minutes later, he might slam a door in anger at a minor argument with a coworker, or mutter curses under his breath about bills that hadn't been paid. Neighbors remembered the small acts of kindness: a package left on a doorstep, a helping hand offered without being asked, but they also recalled the volatility, the unpredictability that lurked behind the charm. On the weekdays, the house echoed with the clash of pressures. Job instability meant that bills stacked higher than he could manage, deadlines loomed, and the constant hum of anxiety never quieted. Nicholas often drank to manage it, telling himself the bottle could smooth over the rough edges, make the world tolerable. But the relief was fleeting, leaving in its wake a deeper recklessness, a subtle carelessness that would, in time, touch the one life he loved most. Interactions with Liliana were full of micro-moments now vivid in hindsight. Her tiny hand pressed against the back of his chair as he worked, tugging gently for attention. She would squeal with delight when he twirled her in the living room, her curls bouncing, legs kicking the air, eyes shining with trust and wonder. "Daddy again," she'd chant, giggling uncontrollably. He would smile, lift her again, and for a brief moment the world felt right. Yet those moments were fleeting. The tension under the surface never truly left. Family members recalled whispers of concern. His sister, remembering a weekend visit, noted the way Nicholas would drift into silence after an argument, the way his eyes seemed distant, the way he sometimes shook a little as he sipped a drink. His father described a son who loved fiercely but struggled to reconcile that love with the pressures he carried. He could be warm, protective, tender, and in the same heartbeat, careless, impatient, and blind to the danger his choices might create. As September approached, those tensions intensified. Arguments over custody schedules, mounting bills, and the growing reliance on alcohol were no longer background noise. They were catalysts. Subtle lapses, unnoticed by most, began to compound. A red light ignored, a missed turn on the way to the park, a distracted glance away from Liliana in the car. Each small misstep was ordinary on its own, but together they formed a chain of events that would culminate in disaster. Nicholas Stemen was a man of contradictions. He loved his daughter, yet the pressures he could not control, the habits he could not break, and the frustrations he carried were building toward a moment that would shatter lives. September 24, 2024. A morning like any other, yet destined to fracture into a memory that would haunt a community forever. Sunlight spilled across the Collins driveway. Liliana, small backpack strapped unevenly across her shoulders, held her mother's hand tightly. She giggled at a joke only a mother and daughter could share. "Be careful, sweetie," Ariel said, pressing a soft kiss to the top of Liliana's curls. The air smelled of dew, of breakfast cooking in the kitchen, of ordinary life. That morning nothing seemed out of place. No one could have imagined it would be their final routine. Meanwhile, across town, Nicholas Stemen's morning had a different rhythm. The house smelled faintly of last night's drinks. He poured the first of many, amber liquid catching the sun through the window. Each sip dulled the tension he carried, the stress of bills, custody disputes, a world he felt slipping from his control. By mid-morning, the drinks blurred into each other. Speech slurred. Hands shook slightly. His phone buzzed with missed calls, ignored texts, and cryptic notifications. He typed a rambling message, deleted it, started again. By early afternoon, he had come to pick his daughter up, drunk and soaking through and through with alcohol. But if you were the mother, would you have allowed him to go with your child in that condition? Although she wasn't comfortable, she still allowed him to go with her. Witnesses along Thayer Road noticed a car weaving erratically. It drifted across lanes, braked suddenly, then accelerated. One driver later recalled muttering, "Who's driving like that? Someone's going to get hurt." Nicholas' confusion, amplified by alcohol, had begun to manifest in ways no parent should encounter behind the wheel. Micro-errors, a missed turn, a delayed brake, a glance away, formed a chain of consequences too small to notice in isolation, yet impossible to escape collectively. Meanwhile, Liliana hummed a little song, unaware of the danger creeping closer. She tugged at her father's sleeve, asking simple questions. "Daddy, why are the trees moving so fast?" Her voice, playful and innocent, contrasted with the chaos unfolding in Nicholas' mind. He smiled distractedly, leaning back in his seat, not fully registering her curiosity or the world outside the windshield. As evening approached, the unexpected had happened. The quiet Ohio road darkened. Smoke began to curl faintly from beneath the hood of the car. Nicholas swayed behind the wheel, muttering that everything was fine. Flames would erupt soon. Bright against the deepening sky, they would illuminate the vehicle in ways that no one driving by could ignore. And in the haze of alcohol and frustration, Nicholas whispered again to himself, "Nobody's in the car." The car jerked one final time before coming to a halt in the center of Thayer Road. Its headlights trembled against the cracked asphalt, throwing flickering shadows across the trees, stretching like silent witnesses to the unfolding chaos. The engine wheezed and groaned, a mechanical whisper of trouble. Nicholas Stemen opened the door. He stepped out swaying. Hands trembled as he ran them through his hair, muttering to himself, come on, just calm down." His voice slurred, fragmented, a combination of frustration and confusion. He glanced back at the car, then away, as if the moment itself demanded denial. From the passenger seat came a faint shuffle. A small, muffled sound. A giggle turned into a whimper. Liliana stirred in her booster seat, tugging gently at the straps, her tiny fingers brushing against the edge of the seat. She hummed softly, unaware of the danger creeping closer. The scene outside was a storm she could neither comprehend nor escape. Smoke began to curl from beneath the hood, thin and gray at first, then thickening quickly, carrying the bitter tang of burning oil and rubber. Sparks flashed as the fire met the asphalt and metal. Nicholas stepped back instinctively, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his eyes, almost as if he anticipated what was about to happen. Nearby, a witness later recalled seeing him pause, muttering fragments of words. It's fine," he shifted, rocked slightly, his gaze darting between the fire and the empty night. The tension hung in the air, silent, suffocating, as the car trembled on the edge of total destruction. The fire caught faster than anyone could imagine. Flames licked the metal frame, bright tongues dancing over the hood and windshield, the heat distorting the night air. Shadows shifted violently across the road. Crickets chirped, distant cars passed by, the world unaware of the tragedy unfolding on its quiet asphalt stage. Inside, Liliana's small body leaned slightly forward, her curls catching faint reflections from the spreading flames. A tiny cough escaped her lips as smoke curled upward. She tugged at her father's sleeve, a soft question. "Daddy?" Lost in the haze, unheard, unseen. Every creak of the metal, every spark from the tires, every whisper of wind through the trees amplified the unease. Each micro-moment was a silent step toward catastrophe, yet the world outside still perceived only ordinary chaos. A man drunk, a car on fire. And so the question rises with the smoke. What should investigators think when a car catches fire with a visibly intoxicated father standing outside? A tragic accident? Careless recklessness? Or a deeper, more deliberate act? Hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. The deputies arrive to a scene that feels wrong before anyone speaks. The car is still burning, low flames licking through the dashboard, smoke drifting into the cold air. The heat casts a trembling orange glow across the road, lighting the shape of a man who looks less like a father in crisis and more like someone waiting for consequences to find him. Nicholas stands several feet back, swaying, eyes glassy. His clothes are soaked in sweat. His breath carries that unmistakable sting of alcohol, sharp enough for the deputies to catch before they get within arm's reach. One deputy approaches slowly, watching the man's hands, watching his expression, watching the way he keeps glancing at the burning car but never stepping toward it. The first question cuts through the crackling of the fire. "Sir, is anyone in the car?" Beep. A flicker over Nicholas's face. Something, fear, realization, calculation, flashes and disappears. Then he answers too quickly. "No." The deputy doesn't write the answer down immediately. He waits, 'cause something feels off. Another question. "Do you have children?" Nicholas inhales sharply. Not the breath of a man about to tell the truth, but the breath of someone trying to find the safest version of it. She's with her grandfather. No eye contact. Hands twitching. Voice wobbling between courage and collapse. The deputies exchange a glance. Just a brief one, but enough to signal. Something isn't lining up. One steps toward the vehicle, flashlight slicing through smoke. The beam hits the shattered interior, sweeps over the front seats, then pauses on the rear, where heat distortion makes it difficult to see anything clearly. He radios in for fire units and EMS, but his voice carries tension now, the kind that comes from sensing danger that hasn't fully revealed itself. Back near the road, Nicholas shifts his weight, inching away as if proximity to the burning vehicle threatens more than just his safety. As if it threatens the story he's trying to hold together. His breathing grows shallow. His answers get shorter. His eyes keep darting between the deputies and the car, like he's waiting for someone or something to interrupt him. And the narrator steps in, quiet and unnerving. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't shock. This was a man choosing a lie in the face of truth. A lie that would shape every second of the investigation that followed. The deputies begin cross-checking his statements. One runs his license. Another shines a light on Nicholas's hands, noticing they're trembling but not from fear, from intoxication. Another circles back with the same question, hoping repetition will force clarity. "You're absolutely sure no one's inside?" Silence. Nicholas swallows hard, then nods. The burning car pops. A small explosion under the hood. And Nicholas flinches so violently that one deputy instinctively places a hand on his holster. Not because Nicholas is dangerous, but because he is unpredictable. Investigators later call this moment the fracture point, the exact second when Nicholas could have chosen truth but didn't. The flames finally weaken at 8:02 p.m., the last bursts of orange collapsing into thick gray smoke drifting across Thayer Road. Firefighters step back, letting the engine quiet, radios buzzing softly in the background. Standard protocol: sweep the vehicle. Confirm it's empty. Document the damage. Nothing about this moment suggests what's coming next. A deputy circles toward the passenger side, flashlight in hand. The beam cuts through the haze still lingering inside the car. He lifts a hand, shielding his eyes from the heat radiating off the metal. Then he freezes, not because of fire, but because something inside the back seat breaks the pattern he was expecting. He calls another officer over. Then another. They lean in. The first firefighter to arrive on scene pulls off his gloves, jaw tightening. No one speaks. Through the smoke-stained window, the outline becomes unmistakable. Small, still, positioned where a booster seat should have been. It isn't debris. It isn't a doll. It's a child. When they open the rear door, the air shifts, hot, heavy, suffocating. A medic leans closer, voice low, as he confirms what the others already know. It's Liliana. She is motionless. Her legs show burns, but the medics can see the earlier injuries too. Blood where it shouldn't be, signs she was unable to move long before the fire reached her. One deputy steps back, hand on the roof of the car, trying to steady himself. Another whispers into his radio, voice breaking for the first time that night. These are trained responders, men and women who have handled scenes that would keep most people awake for years. But this is different. A firefighter sets his helmet on the ground. No one rushes. No one speaks. The world narrows to the terrible reality sitting in the back seat. Across the scene, Nicholas watches. He isn't running. He isn't yelling. He isn't even asking who they found. Just standing there, unsteady, breathing hard, eyes avoiding the back seat. An investigator notes it silently. It's the kind of detail that becomes important later, because the truth is no longer a question. It's sitting inside the car, a child whose day began like any other, and ended here. No officer, no firefighter, no medic will forget what they saw when the smoke cleared on Thayer Road. By 8:21 p.m., Thayer Road looks less like a quiet Ohio backroad and more like a command center. Floodlights illuminate the charred vehicle from every angle, their beams cutting through lingering smoke. Deputies expand the perimeter, marking off a wider radius than usual, because after what was found in that back seat, no one is taking chances with evidence. A senior investigator steps beneath the tape, jotting the first notes in his field book. He pauses, glancing toward the patrol car where Nicholas sits, slumped forward, rocking slightly as if trying to ground himself. His hands tremble as he rubs his forehead. The odor of alcohol trails behind him like a second shadow. Officers share a look, concern, suspicion, disbelief, all compressed into a silent exchange. Across the road, a fire marshal kneels beside the vehicle's front end. A portable thermal reader clicks steadily in his hand. The readings show patterns. Concentrated heat along the lower engine block, a spread line along the passenger side floor. These patterns will later help determine whether this fire sparked naturally or was aided by circumstance, or by choice. Inside the vehicle, a forensic photographer works methodically. He shifts angles, capturing what the naked eye might overlook. Blistered seat material, melted plastic pooling near the footwell, soot patterns on the interior ceiling. A second specialist follows behind him, using a small metal probe to test burn depth on remaining fabric. He pauses at one spot, presses again, then calls over the lead investigator. Quiet words. Nod. Another note written down. These are the details the public never sees. Details that whisper the truth while the rest of the world is still catching its breath. Meanwhile, two deputies confront the hardest task of the night, reconstructing the chain of events that led to this moment. They work off body cam timestamps, earlier dispatch logs, and witness statements pouring in now that the fire is on the evening news. A timeline starts to take shape. 4:06 p.m. Nicholas purchases alcohol at a local gas station. 5:12 p.m. A driver calls 911, reporting a swerving sedan matching his plate. 6:47 p.m. A neighbor spots his car parked crookedly at the edge of a parking lot, engine running, lights on. 7:15 p.m. He leaves that lot with Liliana still in the back seat. 7:48 p.m. Smoke begins seeping from under the hood. 7:53 p.m. Flames appear. 7:59 p.m. Emergency call made. 8:02 p.m. Fire suppressed. 8:04 p.m. Discovery of the child. Every timestamp becomes a wound. One cut after another, each revealing how many chances existed to stop this before it reached fire and ash. While investigators gather physical evidence, two deputies return to Nicholas. He lifts his head slowly, eyes unfocused. They ask a simple question first. "Do you understand what we found in your car?" He mumbles an answer, voice barely formed. The officer repeats the question. Nicholas shakes his head and mutters something about thinking she was somewhere else, but his words don't line up with the timeline. His story shifts slightly each time, a drift investigators recognize instantly. One deputy leans subtly toward his partner, another silent communication. Because even in his condition, there's something unusually calculated about the way Nicholas avoids mentioning his daughter by name. Not fear, not grief, something else. Inside the floodlit perimeter, an assistant coroner closes the back of the transport vehicle where Liliana's small body now rests. He wipes his face with a cloth, not because of sweat, but because of something deeper, a human reaction to a moment no amount of training can fully prepare anyone for. Later tonight, an autopsy will begin, and it will bring answers no one wants to hear. Back at the burned car, the fire marshal stands and gives a subtle shake of his head. He's not ready to make an official statement, but the pattern he's seeing, the intensity, the direction of spread, the way the smoke residual traveled, is raising quiet alarms among the investigative team. One of the younger deputies steps closer to the marshal. "Mechanical?" he asks quietly. The marshal hesitates. "We'll see," he replies. "But it's not adding up the way you'd expect." The deputy writes that down too. And this is where suspicion becomes more than instinct. It becomes evidence taking shape. It becomes the first hint that the tragedy unfolding on Thayer Road may not be just the result of a bad night or a terrible streak of luck, but something built over hours, decisions, neglect, and a truth Nicholas refuses to confront. By 9:12 p.m., the interrogation room is cold and sterile. Fluorescent lights hum softly above a polished table. The air smells faintly of disinfectant, but tension clings to every corner. Nicholas Stemen sits across from two investigators, shoulders hunched, eyes unfocused, hands resting awkwardly on the table. The scent of alcohol lingers, a pungent, cloying reminder of the hours that led to this moment. Minutes pass in silence. Every tick of the clock seems to amplify the weight of what occurred on Thayer Road hours earlier. Finally, one investigator leans forward, voice measured but firm. "Nicholas, we need the truth. How much did you drink before your daughter was in the car?" Nicholas swallows hard. His throat works as if the words will not come. Then, almost whispering, he admits, "I had 10 drinks. I blacked out." The confession lands in the room like a physical blow. Silence stretches. The investigators exchange glances, their pens poised, minds racing to connect every timeline, every witness statement, every radio dispatch to this single admission. The interrogators begin carefully, pressing into the gaps Nicholas cannot explain. "Where was Liliana before you got in the car?" He shifts uncomfortably. I thought she was with her grandfather." Another question follows, sharper now. "Why did you say no one was in the car at the scene?" Nicholas lowers his gaze, voice trembling. "I don't know. He trails off, choking on the enormity of the lie, the weight of the reality he tried to escape with alcohol. Outside the room, the timeline of events reconstructs itself in the investigators' minds. Every receipt from that day, every dashcam frame, every eyewitness account now collides with his confession. His blackout is not just a lapse. It's the thread that unravels his story, revealing negligence layered over denial, and the chilling realization that a child's life was placed in his hands and lost. The investigators push further, their questions surgical. "Do you remember swerving down Thayer Road? Do you remember seeing smoke?" Nicholas shakes his head weakly. The answers are fragmented, incomplete, unreliable. His memory is clouded by alcohol, yes, but is it memory loss or an emotional shield? As he sits there, slouched and trembling, the human dimension of the tragedy presses down. In his silence, the room seems to echo with the laughter of a little girl who once adored swings, grapes, and goldfish crackers. The investigators feel it too, the impossible juxtaposition of innocence and horror. Nicholas' body language begins to betray him. He fidgets, runs a hand through his hair, stares at the table as if searching for answers in the fluorescent glare. His words are minimal. His remorse is partial, complicated. He's both afraid of punishment and of fully confronting what he allowed to happen. This is not a simple confession. It is the unraveling of a man's carefully constructed denial. Forensic evidence is interwoven with the dialogue. His blood alcohol concentration confirms the 10 drinks. The witness accounts confirm the swerving. The fire patterns match his admitted timeline. Each detail converges on a truth he tried desperately to avoid. His choices directly endangered the life of his daughter. A final moment of pause fills the room. Nicholas leans back, a shiver running through him. Not from the air, but from the understanding of what cannot be undone. The investigators sit back as well, letting the weight of his admission sink in. Outside, the world waits for the narrative to catch up, unaware of the precise moment when truth pierced the protective haze of alcohol and lies. By September 26, 2024, at 7:15 p.m., American Township was quiet in the way small towns are after tragedy. Streetlights casting pale halos on empty sidewalks, the hum of distant traffic, and the occasional rustle of leaves in the September wind. But at the corner of Thayer Road, near the site of the fire, a crowd had gathered. Families held candles, their flickering light reflecting off tear-streaked faces. Children clutched plush toys. Parents held them close, whispering reassurances that the night could not promise. A small altar had been set up. Balloons, a bouquet of lilies, a photograph of Liliana Stemen smiling in a pink dress on her 2nd birthday. The scene was simple, yet profoundly heavy. Each candle, each whispered name, each tear was a testament to the community's collective grief. Local parents spoke quietly to reporters. One mother, shaking as she held her 4-year-old close, whispered, "Could this happen to mine?" The question lingered, unanswered, yet resonating through the crowd. Fear intertwined with sorrow, leaving a sense of helplessness. Other parents quietly nodded, glancing at their children on the sidewalk, gripping hands tighter. Social workers and child safety experts joined the vigil, speaking with reporters and each other. They pointed out warning signs often missed, the subtle patterns of neglect, and the dangerous intersections of substance abuse and parental responsibility. One expert, Dr. Keisha Anderson, shared in a recorded statement, "Families like the Stemens often hide cracks that, if unnoticed, can become catastrophic. We can't assume love is always protective." African American community leaders also spoke, bringing context and reflection. Pastor Malik Thompson, a fixture in the township, held a candle before the vigil began. His voice, steady yet weighted, echoed across the small park. Liliana's death is a painful reminder of generational trauma and the ripple effects of addiction. We mourn her, but we also examine ourselves, our families, our vigilance, and our responsibilities to the children in our care. In communities everywhere, there is a shared fear that the ones meant to protect may also imperil. Children trust adults entirely, unaware that mistakes, negligence, or decisions made in moments of anger or intoxication can irreversibly alter their lives. And sometimes the failure is so intimate, so close, that it leaves a wound that echoes through the years. How does a town reconcile when the danger comes from within the family itself? When the people who should be a child's sanctuary become the source of harm? These are not abstract questions. They are immediate, real, and piercing. In moments like these, when the system, the family, and the individual all fail simultaneously, who steps in? And how many children suffer in silence before someone notices? It was Monday, November 17, 2024, 9:30 a.m., when the Allen County courtroom filled with a tense quiet that pressed against every person present. The case of Nicholas Stemen, father, defendant, the man whose choices had claimed the life of his 2-year-old daughter, was about to unfold in front of a jury and a grieving community. Prosecutors opened with deliberate precision, painting a vivid timeline. Hours of alcohol consumed, reckless driving observed by multiple witnesses, text messages and calls showing disorientation, and ultimately, the tragic fire that took Liliana's life. Each point was accompanied by recreations. Diagrams of the car, maps of Thayer Road, and visuals of the timeline that left jurors absorbing the weight of every moment. The defense responded with stark contrast, emphasizing Nicholas' blackouts, the fog of intoxication, and claimed lack of intent. His lawyer argued that human error, even tragic, does not equate to deliberate malice. Yet, prosecutors pressed the point that parental responsibility is absolute. In the eyes of the law, a child cannot be left defenseless, and the failure to protect is itself a choice with consequence. The judge's voice carried throughout the room, steady, unwavering. The court acknowledges the human frailty of all, but a child's life is sacred, and the duty of care is paramount. Negligence here is not minor. It is catastrophic.